Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show.
My mom's Bab movie, Bab Barbara.
Oh,
was Yentl.
I thought you said bad movie.
No, Babs.
Babs movie. Your mom's Babs movie.
That really doesn't sound good when you say it like that.
It's sort of lost all meaning to me.
Yes.
We have a lot to talk about.
Okay.
I feel like this is we're starting a new series. Would you like to? I have been fearing that we all week. I haven't I haven't said anything to you about it, but I've been really worried that I've been watching the wrong movie. What movie are we, in fact, talking about tonight?
Tonight we're talking about The Heist.
This is why people don't talk to you at parties. Because you break their trust. What movie are we doing tonight for real?
Tonight we're doing one of the magician movies from 2006.
From Hollywood's 2006 Double Dipper.
That's right. We're doing The Prestige.
Oh, thank goodness. That is a relief. Up to this moment there was doubt. So we're doing The Prestige. We're starting our magician movies series.
Yes.
Pretty excited about that. We have to talk about. We've got to talk about Star Trek now. Because we didn't last week. It came out. I know it's a little late. Last week it came out and you hadn't seen it yet. We got to do a mini kibitz review.
Okay.
A little one. Because you're kind of a downer on it now, and that makes me upset. So we're going to talk about that.
I don't want to be a downer.
And then what else are we going to talk about? We got to talk about our trailers.
Yes. And then we're going to talk
about our movie. And then we're going to go to bed. So what would you like to talk about first? First of all, this is The Next Reel.
Welcome, everybody.
Thank you all for joining us. And I am Pete Wright, and that over there is Andy Nelson. Say hello, Andy.
Booyah.
And we're going to be... that.
It's kind of like a high, right?
Wow, it is. I thought I was at an MMA match just for a second there. I hear "booyah" is what's yelled there.
That's right.
Rousing. Yeah. And so we're gonna we spoil movies. We talk about a movie every single week. Every single solitary week we do this thing. And so you can head over to thenextreel.com, see all the movies that we've talked about in the past. And we're coming up on not next week, but the week after, I think, right? We're doing our film board. So we'll get the gang together and we'll talk about another new release that's coming out at the end of the month. And we're very excited about it. Fits right in our series that we're doing. It is our very special episode.
It is our very special episode, and if you're clever, you can probably figure out what it's going to be.
And so very excited about that. Head over to facebook.com/thenextreel. You can join in the conversation over there, and I think that's it. Twitter, iTunes. Definitely head over to iTunes. You can subscribe to the show for free, so you don't miss a single episode of film goodness from yours truly and Andrew, and leave us some nice comments. We sure appreciate the kind words that come in on the show, and it certainly helps other people discover. Your stars help other people discover our weekly show, so we appreciate that very much.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get to the meat of this thing. Let's talk Star Trek.
I liked it.
Meh. I'm totally disappointed in your review. That's what I give you. That's what I give your review of this movie. Meh. Do you know what it is? Because you succumbed to peer pressure.
I did. Well, here's the thing. I liked it watching out. I didn't, or when I walked out of the theater, if I could talk, I liked it. I didn't love it. I enjoyed the whole ride, except I had a few issues with some parts that lulled for me. And then, as I reported to you, when it got down to the end, I was like, "Gosh, wish I was a little more emotionally caught up in the film." Like the guy behind me who was crying. And you probably reported, yeah, that was me. I was the guy behind you who was crying.
I was not alone in that experience. There were some man tears. You know what it was? It was so spoilers, stop, turn the volume down. If you haven't seen the movie, starting now. So the sequence where we go full on Wrath of Khan, right?
Yes.
That part, it totally had me. It hooked me. But the thing is, it hooked me in Wrath of Khan. Like, I knew what was coming, and right. It still hooked me. Like that is just a sequence between those two people that I am obviously. I'm going to be moved by seeing the reversal of having Kirk in the radiation chamber and Spock on the outside. I thought was a nice twist, but it was a nice twist given what I thought was a pretty pedestrian choice.
Yeah.
And that was I think that was my only problem. I didn't have any real problem with the the believability of putting the ship underwater, of doing all those things that everybody who is being way overly cynical about this film thought. I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was, as you said, it was a great ride. I love the setup. I love the conversation with Admiral Pike and Spock and Kirk as they're getting chewed out. What's the number one lesson here? Never trust a Vulcan. Like those little quips, I thought it was just perfect Abrams and team dialogue. It was delivered well. I loved the crew. I wanted to be on that ship. That was my experience with the movie.
I didn't want to be on that ship.
Well,
shit went through hell. I was like, I don't know how many people died on that ship.
Oh yeah, especially with the hole in the warp.
Getting sucked out into warp drive.
Into warp space.
I mean, or whatever you call it when you're warping through space.
Sucked out into the vacuum of warp space.
That really, really would suck.
This was the problem. And I obviously was emotionally connected, but two things bugged me. The only two things that really bugged me. One was that Abrams and team couldn't come up with something new. Like, this was a new twist on a very old theme, and I feel like we have a brand new crew and a new version of this ship and a lot of new possibilities, and they did something old with it. And it that's the only... I enjoyed, given that choice, if that's our only choice here, I enjoyed the ride and I had a good time with it. The only other thing that bugged me is they've got 72 super beings on the ship, 71 super beings on the ship. Why did they not, take a drop of blood from one of the other frozen, popsicle super beings? Instead, they have this, chase of Spock. Like I felt like between Spock and Khan on Earth, and I felt like that was a little bit of a kind of a hole for me. That was the big hole that made me think, wow, somebody should have caught that and made that and sealed that up before they sent it to print.
That's one of those things that, you got to wonder about, but it becomes one of those holes that by that point, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot about those other 71 people there, but whatever.
Yeah.
It was all very convenient, but it still is enjoyable.
That's right.
It still was enjoyable.
But there's this article floating around that you totally you drank the Kool-Aid.
I did. Well, it made me go, oh yeah, that was kind of a weird thing. That was a weird thing too. There was a lot of things that they brought up that I was like, well, yeah, I can see their point. I don't really agree with it, but I can see what they're saying. And I thought it was written in a pretty funny way, so I still give them that.
Yeah.
So,
well, I quite enjoyed it. I've seen it twice.
I know.
We did the IMAX and then again the 2D, and honestly, I enjoyed the 2D more.
Yeah, I saw it. Well, as I told you, I saw it in 2D late at night. I was one of probably about 10 people in the theater.
Yeah,
it was very. It was running like every 30 minutes. So I think I probably just caught the last tail end of people trying to catch it that night. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so overall, thumbs up. Overall, we like it.
Yeah.
I was talking, Chad, our comrade in arms from the film board. Chad called me today, and we were talking about the movie and said the exact same thing that I'd said earlier on. That it was like this was a movie. When I saw the first one, 2009, I loved it, and at the end of it, the only thing I said was, I want more of that. And this movie gave me more of that, and that it answered that it solved the equation for me. And I would love to see even more of that.
I mean, and speaking to your point about the whole Wrath of Khan repeating the past films sort of thing in the film, the thing that I do like about that is I like that I don't know, it just seemed to go along with this whole alternate reality twist that they have in the films now, where they're able to create a whole new version out of an old story. And I thought that was kind of a fun way to go about it. And so in one sense, it didn't bother me too much that they went to an old story and rehashed it in a new way for us. I kind of enjoyed that. I certainly hope that here moving forward that they don't bring the whales in.
The space whales? Yeah, I'm not looking forward to space whales either. But you know what? To your point, I think one of the things that I really like about these choices that they made were just how it lets us explore the inevitability of the Spock-Kirk relationship.
Yeah.
Right. That it doesn't really matter that we're on an alternate timeline. We're still going to have that level of depth between these two characters that otherwise would be. It's that yin and yang, the left brain, right brain. It is, these are two half brains that make a whole, and that's the sort of Roddenberry experiment on this ship. And I thought that was a really nice way, a really nice way to play that out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. Enough about you. Let's talk about your trailer, because I'm fascinated by it.
My fascinating trailer. My brain's not completely clicking tonight, apparently. My trailer is a very interesting looking documentary called The Act of Killing, directed by Joshua Oppenheimer, and presented by Werner Herzog and Errol Morris, two fantastic documentary filmmakers in their own right. It's a frightening look at a death squad leader from a country that I don't believe they name in the trailer, that basically this man who's responsible for just killing, it sounds like, millions of people in just mass killings. And they talk to this guy, and the way they introduce him in the trailer, he's like, oh, he's a grandfather, he's everyone's friend, he's a happy guy, and then all of a sudden it goes, and he's a mass murderer, and it takes this dark turn. And then what they do, which it frightens me, because it's really just kind of a gruesome thing to think about. They take this guy and they have him recreate these kind of mass killings that he did, with theatrical film actors and everything, and they recreate it with special effects, and they dress people up, and they have him basically watch and perform in these mass killings, and really start thinking about what it was that he actually had been responsible for. And you see this person finally having to be in a place where he's reflecting on the murders he's done and the damage he's done. It's a frightening look at the politics and media and tying them all together, and the way things come together, and just the horrifying nature of, in a way, what we put on film, and what we think about what we put on film, and what it's really saying when you really think about it. And I don't know, it looks like a really fascinating glimpse into that aspect of things. And I think that's why I was drawn to it, partly because this documentary that, I've been working on about Sheriff Joe also is really looking at politics and the media and how they tie together. So it looks pretty frightening.
It looks really frightening. It's it is fascinating, and just the staging of the of the killing, the restaging of the killing was just it's really stunning what they got these guys to do, and to do with a lot of pride.
Yeah.
In their, sort of quote, workmanship.
Right.
It was, wow, fascinating.
Yeah, it's horrifying how they kind of just take to it, and they perform these acts of murder, and get this guy to really start thinking about the act of murder.
Oh, it is it's a fascinating look at it, and it's a perspective shift. It's one of those things that we, when you see the sequence that really stuck out to me was the watching them on the shooting that television show, the talk show, talking about how they have come up with this with a new and much more efficient way of killing communists. That was it was a very nice sort of interview, and then watching them actually go and sort of recreate the efficiency with which they kill communists. And she's, her quote was, something to the effect of, it is much more efficient, much less violent, and yet you still really mow them down. It's just awful.
Yeah.
Awful stuff. And so.
Yeah, it looks like a fascinating independent documentary that will be popping up over the summer. So,
my trailer is The Wall, and it's already out in Germany. It came out in October in Germany. It has not come here yet, so who knows when it will hit a theater near you? But I think it's worth keeping an eye out for on iTunes and Netflix. It is Let's see. A woman inexplicably finds herself cut off from all human contact when an invisible, unyielding wall suddenly surrounds the countryside. It's kind of a psychological thriller of this woman alone in the woods, and the wall is very familiar to me. I offer this trailer just because of the kind of interesting parallel to to Stephen King's Under the Dome and the upcoming miniseries, or at least TV series that's coming of Under the Dome that he's producing. It's a very similar thing. Woman is walking along, and suddenly this invisible shield comes down, and she walks into it, and then she's cut off from everything. And she can drive cars into this thing. It's like a giant pie plate has been put on top of her little part of the country, and so it's her and her dog Lynx trying to figure out how to stay sane and get out. Directed by Julian Posler, based on the book by Marlon Haushofer, and the adaptation was written by Posler. So
yeah, it looks fascinating. I'm actually right in the middle of Under the Dome right now. So as soon as I started watching this trailer, I was quite excited because it really taps into that whole feel of this like invisible force field that's keeping you. This one's definitely more of an isolationist sort of a dome that she's stuck behind rather than the Stephen King novel, but it definitely has that same sort of vibe, like the psychology of how you handle yourself and what you do now that you're stuck in this place where you can't actually communicate or contact people on the other side. Right.
And I love the what was the Will Smith adaptation of the vampire one?
I Am Legend.
I Am Legend. It's that whole idea of, let's just take this central character and make them alone, and give them a dog. And I'm a big fan of these isolationist films like this, the Lost at Sea, stuck in a city full of vampires and no one else, stuck under a giant pie plate. I am in favor of these movies. So
big fan.
Big fan of the alone movies.
We'll have to create a new a list on our page on thenextreel.com and of all totally our favorite
isolationist films.
There you go.
That is so good. Favorite. I'm making a note.
There you go.
Oh, that's good.
You'll put that up once you finish your top cornfield movies, or that feature beautiful cornfields.
Oh, right. Did you catch all the Barbie Fairy movies? I'm sure there are some more of those you need to see. Jerk.
You.
All right. Let's talk about. Let's kick off this magic series, shall we?
Let's kick it.
So we're doing The Prestige based on the 2006 magic film. One of the 2006 magic films. This one's based on the book by Christopher Priest, the 1995 novel, which you can find in the show notes. A link to that in the show notes at thenextreel.com. Yep,
and it's also on our list of lists.
Yes.
In our page, yeah.
Yes, indeed. And so this was the Prestige. This particular adaptation stars Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale in the roles of the main magicians. Michael Caine is the grizzled and wise elder magician father figure, and Scarlett Johansson is the dame. What do we think of this movie? Where do you stand now that you've watched it again? Where do you stand?
I actually watched this not too long ago, probably a month or two ago, and just watched it again for the show. I really can't get enough of this film. I think it's just so well done and such a fascinating story of two magicians told in a way where it's almost designed as if the film itself is a magic trick. Everything about it I just find so well crafted that I just have a blast watching it every time I turn it on.
I do too, and and it's funny, as I was researching for the film, I'm trying to figure out because there were people who wildly did not share my opinion.
Idiots.
Seriously, what did they not get? And so I'm trying to figure out what is the argument against this film, and I think think I figured it out, right? The way the film opens, we have Michael Chang's.
That's his biker gangsta name.
Michael Caine is giving us a little bit of a voiceover, right? And he's talking about the setup of every magic trick, right? That you have the pledge, where there's a seemingly real situation set up, the turn in which the reality is of that real situation is challenged, and then the prestige, where all is set right again, and you have to adjust to this kind of a new reality of what you've just seen, right?
Yep.
And the film, in as you already said, is very much set up that way, right? And while we're stuck in this microcosm, watching these magic tricks play out on stage through the various shows and the behind the scene, the backstage and the understage, we are seeing these tricks play out on a little small scale. The film itself is structured like a trick itself, where we have the seemingly real situation of who these guys are set up, and the turn in the second act and the third act where all is set right again, and it is revealed to us what the actual tricks were.
Right.
And it's a movie of one-upsmanship, right? We keep being tricked as an audience about who's who and who's ahead of the other, and it's all fascinating. And it seems to me that the people who are upset by the way this film ends are the people who see it as a failure of expectations, that the final resolution is far less literal than they needed it to be. Does that make sense?
I think so.
That because all the other tricks demonstrate this, the pledge and the turn in a very literal and pragmatic and practical magic setup, now turning it on its head with the mystical resolution of the actual teleportation of or duplication of a person, ends up being a disappointment, because it falls out of the expectation that the film is set up, the tone and tenor of the film.
Right. Yeah.
I totally disagree with that, but I feel like I have to get that out.
Well, I think you're right, and also I think I don't know. I mean, it's a story about magicians and magic, and to me, I mean, the great thing about magic is that the whole thing is designed to be illusion. It's designed to be something that fools the audience. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a story about a magician who really performs magic. I mean, because then all of a sudden we're in the realm of fantasy, and then we're talking Gandalf, right, conjuring things with his wand or his giant stick that he carries. I don't know what his staff,
giant stick.
He probably has a name for it. There's a name for everything.
A staff.
It's a staff.
It's a staff. Oh, Andy.
Let the hate mail come pouring in.
His giant stick. His giant stick of magic. Oh
man.
Goodness. All right. Please recover. You were saying about Gandalf's giant stick?
I don't even know what I was saying. Oh, but real magic. The great thing about stories of magicians is it's all about illusion, and it's about the nature of tricking an audience. The way that these magicians, their whole goal is to trick an audience and make you believe something that is not real. And that's what I love about these magician stories, is because it's all illusion. And then at the end, you realize it was all just an illusion. And the nature of this thing that you see at the end of this one, dealing with Nikola Tesla and this crazy contraption that he creates, there's this element of funky science that's kind of thrown into it, not magic, that also kind of throws an interesting twist into the illusion of what we're dealing with at the end of the film. And I find it fascinating, and I have no problem with that strange scientific element thrown into this. I think it's an interesting element that's brought up. I don't have any problem with that. There's a critic who said I love a good science fiction story. Just tell me in advance in relation to this film. And I'm like, that's not the point of this film. Yes, we use Tesla as a character in this film, and he creates this interesting scientific device that does actually create duplicates of a person, but and this magician uses that in his trick to create this amazing illusion, quote unquote, that he is teleporting himself all the way across the room. But the idea of how this magician uses that and the psychological drama that goes along with what that means, I think, is what makes this film an amazing film. And that's what, maybe they're not getting that. Maybe they think that whole thing is a cheat, but I think that is a fascinating element to this story.
Yeah, you know what? I love the turn on that point, that it turns out that this is not a trick, that this is, in the universe of the film, this is science, and yet it's broken science that allows us to see, in fact, the most human frailty that is going on between these two men, right? That this is, it illustrates just how broken Jackman's character of Robert Angier has become.
Right.
That he is, not only has he been willing to travel all over the world to try to discern the secret, to divine the secret of Christian Bale's transported man trick, but that he is suddenly now at such an emotional fervor that it is acceptable to him to kill himself 100 times.
Right.
To drown himself 100 times. That ends up being I think that ends up being the heart and soul of the film. But you have to get past the fact that it takes a bit of a science fiction turn to get there. And for me, that I think Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale just nail the relationships, the relationship they have in these relationships that they have with each other's, through the course of the film. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And the final scene, as in the warehouse, when they come to terms with one another, is it's pretty special.
Well, it's devastating, and it's interesting. You realize how, because Jackman's character Angier is the one who realizes the lengths that it takes to become a great magician. When he catches on to what this Chinese magician is doing and getting away with, and what he's done in order to create essentially kind of this amazing act of this magically appearing fishbowl that's full, this giant globe of a fishbowl that's full of water with a fish in it that magically appears. When he figures out what this Chinese man has done to himself by basically creating this false life for himself in order to make this trick work, that is the moment when he starts descending into this level that he's finally at the end. And you see that, you realize as the film goes on that Bourdain, Christian Bale's character, along with this twin brother of his, they've been living that their whole life, essentially. The two of them playing one man, or maybe not their whole life, but once they kind of went into this whole magic act, which we never see. But from that point on, where they start living as one man, they essentially have started doing the exact same thing. And it's a frightening thing to realize that you have to essentially give up who you are and become this fake version of yourself in order to actually pull off something that's really magical. And it doesn't work for Angier until he gets this scientific device where he finally pushes himself to a place where he is able to do that. And you're right, it's absolutely horrific that he descends to this place where he's willing to kill himself 100 times in order to pull off the most amazing magic trick. And it's horrifying. It truly is.
Well, it is, and I think it's a great point that you bring up, that Christian Bale's characters, the twins, had already made that commitment to one another, essentially when we meet them, right? I mean, when they're shilling for the fantastic Ricky Jay as the burnt out magician, playing ironically Milton, the burnt out magician. They already are living this lifestyle, right? I mean, do we have any reason to believe otherwise that they?
No, right from the start, that's how they're living.
Right. And so when Angier discovers this, right, there's an interesting turn in his character. As you say, he discovers it. He kind of freaks out when he realizes the level of commitment that is required there. And the rest of the film, interestingly, and this is what I like so much about Hugh Jackman, the way he plays it, it's not necessarily about Hugh Jackman coming to terms with living that kind of commitment, right? Because the example that we get in the Chinese magician is this level of peace that he's made a commitment to this character and he's playing it. Even Christian Bale's character, he sort of shows this level of kind of awe when he sees the Chinese magician. He says, that is real commitment. That's a guy who's perfected, subtextually speaking here, what I'm doing already. I get that. And Hugh Jackman spends the rest of the movie looking feverishly for a shortcut, right? Yeah. Not actually working toward making that kind of emotional commitment, but looking for a technological solution to a challenge of an internal challenge that he just was not able to make until the end.
Yeah, and it's something that I think he really is pushed to that breaking point where he has to find that shortcut because of the death of his wife.
Right.
I mean, that's really what pushes him across the line.
Well, it is. Okay, so his wife dies. This is the root of their animosity toward one another. Yeah. They are shills for Milton. They come up as fake audience members, and they are asked to tie the lovely Julia, who is actually Robert Angier's wife.
Played wonderfully by Piper Perabo.
Piper Perabo, absolutely. And they're to tie her hands and ankles as she's dropped into the Chinese water tank. And we've already been set up that she's, Alfred has, Borden has a new knot he would like to try. She's in for it. She says, I can slip it. We can practice. And then live on stage, even though everybody else was against it, he ties what I think we are led to believe is the new knot, and she can't get out of it.
Yeah. Even
though over the course of the next 20, 30 minutes at the funeral, etc., he keeps saying, I can't remember what knot I tied, but there's clearly a change in knots in the scene.
And I think he's saying that because to me it seems like every time, or to me I interpret it that every time that conversation ends up happening between Hugh Jackman and Angier and Borden, is that he's talking to the one who wasn't on stage.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. That's right.
Well, that's my interpretation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why that particular version of or Christian Bale's character he can't remember which knot he tied because he wasn't the one who was on stage.
Yep. Nope. That's a really good catch. I didn't make that connection at all. That makes much more sense, and that really is the giveaway at the end that we see that in fact Bernard Fallon and Alfred Borden are the twins, and they took turns playing one another.
Yeah,
which adds to some of the relationship complication.
Which is horrifying when the poor wife, beautifully played by Rebecca Hall, who I just think is fantastic, and we may be talking about her sometime in our near future. In something, but yeah, she's wonderful in this, and it's heartbreaking as the wife dealing with this essentially Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of a husband from her perspective. This man who seems to have these personality switches, and I never quite know if is the reason that she ends up killing herself because she finally catches on. And she realizes that it's been these twins all along, or does she kill herself because she is so tormented with this struggle of dealing with this person who she interprets as being this split personality that she can't handle it anymore?
I've always kind of looked at it as both, right? Yeah. That it's the fatigue of having to deal with this person who she thought had a split personality, and then she discovers, in fact, again, in a kind of an homage to the design of the structural design of the film. The Prestige is her killing herself, right? It's her making sense of this world that she suddenly discovers was true all along.
Yeah. It's just horrifying, though. I mean, it's a tragic thing that happens because of this lifestyle that these two men have chosen to live. These two versions of Christian Bale, or the two men that he's portraying in this film.
Right.
It's tragic.
I'm trying to. I was trying to put together the character arc for each character, and you already brought up his wife, and I think she fits the model of the of the Prestige. The Pledge, the Turn, and the Prestige. And obviously our two main characters fit into that model, and Michael Caine's character fits into that model when he discovers the true nature of the universe at the very, very end, and discovers the nature of Hugh Jackman's character, and what he's been doing all along. Sort of his universe is set, sideways.
Yeah.
I think when I look at it that way, it makes the movie so much more interesting to watch, that every one of these characters has been so meticulously crafted by Jonathan and Christopher Nolan that we and obviously Christopher Priest, that they are like these pieces in this fantastic puzzle that when we see the final scene with as Hugh Jackman sort of reveals himself as the Lord, it all fits together.
Yeah, in a frightening way. And what I find fascinating about that is it's really hard watching this film to get a handle on who the protagonist is.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, I think it shifts a little bit throughout the film, because I don't think you really feel like it's Bourdain, Christian Bale's character, until you're nearing the end, as you're really kind of watching Hugh Jackman's character, Angier's, descending into madness. Or not madness, but it's almost like this frightening position of power that he has finally achieved, because he's gotten to this low level where he is willing to go to this place where he kills himself night after night to appease his audience. It's really a frightening descent watching Hugh Jackman take. And then at the end, when you see that he's still alive, and you just feel so spiteful toward him and everything that he's done, and you see that Christian Bale, one of them dies at the noose, and the other one is the one who's finally able to get the daughter back and create this life. It's like, okay, so maybe he was our protagonist all along, but it's hard to watch it that way the whole time. It's such an interesting film. It's hard to get a pinpoint on who we're rooting for, but I find that in itself a part of the magic of the film, and watching these characters change, and watching our position as who we're rooting for kind of change as the film goes along. It's all part of the magic trick that the film is playing on us, I think. Absolutely.
It feels like there's a new little tiny betrayal every 5 minutes, right? I mean, every time. When the names make me crazy. So when Borden meets his future wife, suddenly we are brought into a new sort of emotional connection with him, and he's the guy we're sort of connected to. And then Angiers meets his new babe, Scarlett Johansson, and they go through their little love tryst. And so their sort of our allegiance kind of follows their romances, and then is tested every time they pull a spy versus spy on one another. When Borden goes and shoots off, or Angier shoots off the fingers of Borden, it's whoever our sort of sympathy sentiment is tilted toward, that we're now paying more attention to as the protagonist. But it changes every 5 minutes in this film, and so I think that's the game. That's one of the things that makes it, I think, so compelling.
Absolutely, yeah. It's such a twisty, turny thing in and of itself. It's just watching the characters change. I just find such a fascinating and enjoyable twist.
So talk about a little bit. This is not necessarily a linear story. It's told. A lot of the narrative is told through them reading these journals that they've stolen from one another.
Right.
But the structure, the way the movie was cut, particularly in the beginning, the sort of the pacing of the way the movie was cut, the way we earn flashbacks in this film. I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about how it was structured.
It's fascinating. I think that Jonathan Nolan and Christopher Nolan adapted this together based on the Christopher Priest novel, as you said. Christopher Priest's novel itself was an epistolary. Is that how you say it? Epistolary novel, written as if it's just a whole bunch of journals and letters and things like that. And he created this fascinating jump back and forth. The novel has a lot of differences. There's bits of it that happen actually in present day with, I believe it's descendants, I can't quite remember, who are reading these stories based on the magicians from 100 years before. And so you get this all this jumping back and forth between them reading it and the journals and all this sort of stuff. And initially, when Jonathan Nolan, Christopher Nolan, I think he was busy working on Batman Begins when they first started tapping into this, or maybe it was what was the film he did right before that? Insomnia. Jonathan adapted it. He kind of cut out the entire structure with the journals, and he left that to the side. Christopher Nolan, when he came back in, realized how important it was to the novel and really felt that was going to be key here. He took that and put it back into the script, and they ended up going with it, which works really well. And it created this ability for them to really jump around the story using this nonlinear model where you'd get little bits of one thing, and then that would jump backward as you started essentially having a flashback to something else, and you'd get some of that story. You'd jump forward again, and you'd follow that person a little more. You get to a point where somebody's reading a journal, and you're flashing back to someone else reading a journal, and all these fascinating jumps back and forward in time. And it in a way, it has this kind of, I guess now in modern time, we are always saying it feels very Tarantino-esque, as you know, you're jumping around in your linear space of your story. And it works really well in the context of this particular story because of the nature of the magic trick and because of when you want to basically provide each of the reveals to your audience and when you want them to all of a sudden catch on to something. If you told it in a linear fashion, it probably wouldn't have as much of that magic, and it wouldn't capture you quite as much by surprise as things came along. What's great about the structure of this story is that it does really help tie in the nature of the pledge, the turn, and the prestige, these elements of the magic trick. And then the other fascinating thing about the nature of the script is, and I just totally blanked. I just totally lost it.
That's right, man. You were on a roll.
I know. I'm gonna look for it.
What is the? So you were going to talk about the script. I was going to go into Lee Smith and editing this film and the cinematography.
We'll
Wally
talk
Pfister.
about that.
Well, no, I think I was just sort of looking at the parallels between what. The way the script is structured and the transformation to, or the choices that you make between script and the editing room, right? As he's trying to figure out, because some of these flashbacks are wicked short,
right?
These little, and the use of Michael Caine's voice and of Christian Bale's voice, that. It feels like they're sitting right behind your ears. They say, are you watching closely?
Right.
Those the choices that they ended up making to actually get the point across, to drive home some image or something that you need to keep in the back of your mind in order to earn the prestige of the film. 70 minutes later, 80 minutes later, it ends up being, I think, very powerful. Lee Smith is. Go ahead.
And hold on. I remembered what I was going to say, so let me get it out before I forget it again.
Yeah, do it quick.
The other fascinating thing about the narrative structure is that because we're reading these journals and because of the way that you hit these points as they're reading the journals, where all of a sudden you realize that they're writing the journal that each character is reading, which essentially they get to a point where they're stealing each other's journals and reading them. And you get to this point at the end of them where you realize the person who's writing it and narrating that particular journal actually knows that this other person is stealing it and reading it. You all of a sudden create this fascinating situation of this unreliable narrator, this person who is purposefully telling you a story that may or may not be the real story. And what I think that lends to is the nature of the magician, giving us this pledge, the turn, and the prestige. Now, all of a sudden, we have these magicians who aren't necessarily telling us the story because that's the story we need to be, or we want to be told, but it's the story that they need to be telling us in order to make the magic trick work. That, I think, was a really fascinating way that they were able to tap into the use of the nonlinear narrative structure in order to create this magic trick of a film.
Oh, I'm so glad you came back to that point. That is a really good point. They come clean with each other, pretty close to proximity to one another, right? In the film, when we get it's as we hear this unreliable narrator in their voice saying, by the way, it's me, and I know you're reading, and I love you, and this is so fun. Let's do more of this, right? But it makes you go back and question certain important elements of the story. Not that you necessarily need to figure out the end, but for example, Scarlett Johansson, I mean, her entire role is up for question at this point because you can't trust what either of these men have written to one another. Because they've betrayed one another, their words become about these other important characters end up becoming fallible.
Yeah,
I think it is fascinating. Okay, what else do you want to talk about?
Well, you had mentioned Wally Pfister.
Yeah, Wally Pfister and Lee Smith, right? We were talking about these guys. These guys have been kind of around for a while with
Nolan.
With our man Nolan. Yeah, they've been around. I see now. I moved my list around. You got me.
Well, Wally Pfister. A fascinating thing about this film, which what I find funny about this film is that not the whole thing, but a good vast chunk of it was shot in and around L.A., not anywhere in England.
Right.
They really wanted to create this real messy style of filmmaking, and because they wanted to move faster, they wanted to just really kind of create something a little fresher. It was mostly handheld. They used this kind of messy style that I was saying. Wally Pfister really wanted to be able to shoot 360 for some of the scenes, where essentially they would rely on some of the natural light. They would kind of rely on what was there so that he could essentially spin the camera as they were filming 360, which they actually do a few times, where they end up moving around characters and you see everything around them, to create this real energetic style to the film that I think lended a great vibe to the whole film overall.
Yeah, it was that sense of immersion, I think, that you're getting to. I mean, as soon as they make that commitment to, that the production is going to have to be able to accommodate, that level of immersion. It's the same sort of thing you get in, later as they start working on Inception, for example. I think that's another one that gives you that same sense of place,
right?
Place and time, which is very powerful.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just, and you had brought up Lee Smith as the other person. I think somebody who has to tap into the nature of this non-linear style. The editor always has to really be on the ball in order to make that make sense. And so I think kudos to Lee Smith being able to really tap into the story that Christopher Nolan was telling and find the right way to cut it together in order to make it make perfect sense, especially when you watch it and then you go back and you watch it again and you can catch the things that are that you missed the first time, very much that whole Sixth Sense sort of thing where you want to go back and watch it to catch all the little hints that you don't catch the first time. And being able to make sure that those are there, I think Lee Smith really was on the ball with this and really edited this film well.
I think so too. And it's an interesting. I watched a little bit of the Truman Show. When I realized when was the last time we talked about Lee Smith? Haven't we talked about him before in Wally Pfister?
We talked about him. I can't remember if we brought him up with Dark Knight Rises when we did that.
Yeah, you're right.
That might have been it.
That might have been it. Well, anyway, they've been around a long time, and he did the Truman Show and Fearless, two of my top films I like very much, and the Truman Show has some of these same sort of interesting elements, and it's that with a different foil, right? In the Truman Show, the editing all serves to play a massive trick on Truman, and it works so well. In this film, it's like a masterclass in playing a trick on a major character, because he's playing tricks on all of them. I just found myself riveted thinking about what he's going through to have to come to that same, like you say, that same level of sort of matching signals with with the director to try and figure out what is going on in this movie as he pieces together frame by frame. It's a fascinating job that he did on this film.
I completely agree. Yeah, great work by him. I mean, really great work by everybody who was on the production of this film. They made this film. It looks gorgeous. It really looks the part of a period British film taking place in the late 1800s that was shot in L.A. I think they did a fantastic job all the way through. And in Colorado Springs. And something else that we haven't talked about at all yet was the amazing David Bowie playing Nikola Tesla, who
he's so great.
I think is just riveting in the role of Tesla. And as small as the part is in this film, I think it's a very powerful role to play in the film, not just because of the nature of the science that he creates that helps Angiers do these magic tricks, but also I think it's incredibly important because of the nature of rivalry in the film and how there's this constant battle between Tesla and Edison about these new scientific inventions that they're coming up with. And, they bring it up in the film how Edison and his men are destroying Tesla's stuff, and they're, these bullies essentially in Tesla. And I mean, really, if you look at history, I think that's how a lot of people kind of see it now, that Edison and his men probably, did kind of, steal stuff from Tesla and destroy Tesla's credibility. And even though Tesla had invented a lot of great stuff, we ended up losing a lot of that because Tesla was really kind of dismissed early on, which is sad.
Right.
But the nature of rivalry between those two men and what it does to them really plays out between the rivalries between Angiers and Borden and their relationship. And rivalries of two people who are trying to achieve this high level of success. It's really fascinating. And I loved that they brought Tesla in as a character in the film because it really emphasized that, and it played with that whole thing so much.
It is it's one of those sort of, show don't tell moments, right? I mean, they absolutely did not need to have Tesla as it could be argued that going to Colorado is a distraction from the primary story, but it ends up working so well to give Angiers this journey, this time away to go and see if he can come to make sense of his own struggles, and then to be sitting at a table out front of the house with Tesla and says, go home. Don't let this go. Forget about this.
Yeah.
No good will come of this. And he says, I'm not going to do that. He says, well, that's good because I've already started building it. We'll see you in a bit. I absolutely love that was his Yoda journey, and it, right. That David Bowie was Hugh Jackman's Yoda.
Right.
That ends up being, I think, a really powerful mini relationship, and he's really memorable understated performance from him.
Absolutely. It's great seeing David Bowie on screen. It's been a long time since he had been on screen. I can't remember the last time he was in a film, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was something else, but it seems like it's been a while.
The location for the Colorado Springs location was not in Colorado Springs at all.
Nope.
It was Osgood Castle in Redstone, Colorado, not actually by Wright's terribly near Colorado Springs.
Not really.
As you cross the Rocky Mountains to get there. But it was a beautiful location.
It is an absolutely beautiful location.
We should
near Aspen, I think.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, it's right near Aspen. We should disclose that Andy and I both grew up in Colorado.
Absolutely.
And I actually grew up in Colorado Springs. And
so you know.
I know. I know of the field of spontaneously lighting light bulbs.
That's right. You grew up at night, every night.
Everything. The city
Why
goes.
Is it so bright, Mommy?
I grew up in a town where at 10 o'clock all the lights went out except for this side of a mountain. It was very strange.
Yeah.
Very strange youth.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
There is, sadly, to my knowledge, when I was a kid, there was a roving Tesla museum that would come to school, and we could see, they would have little Tesla coils that we could play with. And here, kid, put your tongue on this.
Nothing like the ones in the movie.
No, no, nothing quite so extravagant. But to my knowledge, there is not a Tesla museum. He was there. I mean, that part of the story was real. He was there. But as far as I know, to this day, there is no fixed Tesla place to go see all this good stuff.
Damn that Edison. He's still at it.
Still at it. All right. Let's see. Where to from here?
Well, Andy Serkis also appears in the movie.
How crazy is that?
It's always a pleasure actually seeing Andy Serkis performing in something, because you so rarely get to see him perform.
That is so true. And yet he's such an affable guy, I mean, I like when he comes on screen.
I love Andy Serkis. He's great when he's acting. He's just such a quirky guy, and he fits well in these sorts of films like this, King Kong, when he's the human.
Yeah,
things like that. It's fun to watch Andy Serkis
when he's
even topsy turvy.
Right, right.
Yeah,
he's great.
Yeah.
Andy Serkis is great. Let's see here.
You said Ricky Jay already.
I did talk about Ricky Jay. It was a very small part.
Talk about a perfect person to bring into a movie about magicians, though.
A movie about magicians, and to make him out as the guy who's like the dotard and who's who needs to be replaced.
Great.
Ricky Jay's perfect. Michael Caine is.
You got to say it right.
Michael Chang.
No, my cocaine.
My cocaine.
How do you say my cocaine? What was that? Where they were talking about that? It was that.
What are you talking? I feel like I'm missing a joke.
It is a joke. It's a fantastic. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting.
This is a bit. You've lost me on your bit. I could have been your prestige.
Yeah. It'll come to me.
Wow, wow.
I know.
All right. Michael Caine, par excellence. Scarlett Johansson. What do you think of Scarlett?
I always enjoy Scarlett. Maybe it's because she's just gorgeous to look at, but she's she doesn't bother me in this. I mean that.
Wait a minute. I enjoy Scarlett, and she doesn't bother me in this. How do you do that? How do you parse that? I mean
that in the sense that she is playing British, and she doesn't bother me. Like I buy her as a Brit. Her accent never feels like it's stumbling or anything. I feel like she does a good job of playing a Brit, and I buy into it. So with that, I really enjoy her in this film. I think she plays that role of the stage help who needs to look pretty on stage, but at the same time is also helping them pull the trick off. The way that she's passed between the two guys, all of that stuff. I think she does a great job with it. I have no problem with her in this film.
Was she better or worse than her performance of Molly Pruitt in Home Alone 3?
If I had seen Home Alone 3, I could tell you.
We just watched that because it's the only Home Alone on Netflix streaming.
Oh my God, that's funny.
It was such context shock.
Yeah,
I didn't know that she was. I didn't watch that because I was looking for a Johansson film, and that's the one that came out.
That is too funny.
I think I was a little bit bothered by playing British. I didn't. The accent was funny to me, but I think that's more again a context issue that she's a pretty big star at this point. You kind of know her for who she is and what her type is, and I think it was just kind of tough to see her in this role. But Nolan says that this was a part he always imagined her as the actress to play this part.
Right, right. Yeah,
is what it is.
The film I was talking about is The Trip, with Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon in this kind of this mockumentary sort of film that is about the two of them traveling through England and just talking. And I think they actually made a TV series out of it too. And essentially, like, Steve Coogan is playing himself as this this pompous actor who beds women in every hotel they stay at and everything, and Rob Brydon, whose buddy is his buddy who's going along, and they have this whole bit where the two of them are doing Michael Caine impressions, and it's so funny. If you haven't seen The Trip, I definitely recommend watching it, because it's just great watching these two guys go through this whole thing, and watching Steve Coogan play this version of himself is absolutely hysterical. So,
okay,
yes, that's
I made a note.
There you go. But that's the whole my cocaine thing.
My cocaine, yeah, that's gonna be funny later. I can't wait.
There you go.
Okay, what else we got? Andy Serkis, Samantha Mahurin.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, she's the little girl.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Cute.
She's the daughter. She's the daughter. You know what I find interesting? This is a film. Let me jump to the numbers.
Do it. Let's do that.
This is a film. It came out in 2006, as we said, October. The production budget on it was $40 million. It got generally favorable critical reviews when it came out. It's in the 70s, I think, if you look at the different review sites and stuff like that. $40 million to make, with a production a P&A budget of $27 million. So total budget about $67 million. Domestically, it only made about $53 million, so it didn't make its money back domestically. Internationally, it made about 56. So all told, it definitely made its money back, but it wasn't a huge film. It definitely wasn't Batman Begins. It wasn't some of these other big films that Christopher Nolan does, Inception, things like that. It made its money back, but it wasn't a huge, huge hit. But and I lost my point again.
You're having a kind of a night of it.
I am.
Where does it stand in our cost per minute breakdown?
If you look at the cost per minute, it's a longer movie, 130 minutes. So per minute, it costs about $515,000 to make, and it profited about once you add in all the international, about $328,000 per finished minute. So it did a handsome job. It made its money. And I remembered what I was going to say. The reason that I lost it is because I changed my link on my page from where I was to Samantha Mahurin, because you got me. You threw me. You threw me. The thing that I find interesting is that Hugh Jackman, who has been in many big films, this is the film. If you look on his IMDb page, this is the film that, or if you even just search for him on IMDb, this is the first film that is connected to his name, as in the one that is, I don't know, has the most hits. I don't know how that ends up happening on IMDb, but this is the film that, for him, is recognized as the film he's most known for. More than X-Men, which really surprised me.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, that is interesting. More than, because X-Men, but it was before Prestige.
He hadn't done a whole lot other than these big. I shouldn't say that. He hadn't.
That's because he'd done a lot. He'd done Van Helsing. He did X2.
But what I was going to say, he hadn't done a lot where he really was expanding his acting outside of like these big budget types of genres. At least internationally. I mean, maybe he had been down in Australia with some of his the stuff, the TV and film he had been doing down there before X-Men came along in 2000. But once he hit X-Men, it was all these big kind of big films. Kate and Leopold may be a little different, but still it's hitting kind of that romantic sort of thing. This was the first time he was really kind of stepping out to be kind of a more of a heavy dramatic film that wasn't necessarily a big character. He had a few of those in 2006 between this, the Fountain. Yeah, the Fountain, Scoop. So he really kind of changed
2006 was a big year.
It was a big year for him, and I think it was the first year that really led to people discovering the things that Hugh Jackman could do that led him to the greatest film he's ever been in, which of course is Real Steel.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And you never saw movie 43, but let me tell you, Hugh Jackman has a very interesting.
It's actually on my. I've got it in my. I don't know if it's actually. Is it on DVD yet?
Oh,
I'm sure it is. Right. Sure. I had it. It's been in my Netflix queue for so long that it was not available. It had not been released, so it was at the bottom. I haven't seen where it is now. So, but one of my favorites was Swordfish. I had a ball with them. That opening sequence, when the bomb goes off and all the ball bearings come out, that was like this was big in the bullet cam days, the bullet time shot. That was epic.
I don't remember Swordfish.
Oh, Halle Berry.
That's all I remember about it is Halle Berry.
Okay.
Movie 43 has not been released yet. It has not been released yet.
It's still in my
still waiting.
List. All right. Okay, so there were the numbers. Are you ready to rank? Do you have other things?
No.
Let's rank
I think I ran through them all. Yep, let's hit it. Are you ready?
We're moving over to the Flick Chart, which you can find us at flickchart.com/thenextreel. Or you can just go to thenextreel.com and click on our little top 100 line, which we're getting closer to.
Slowly, week by week. All right, The Prestige or Cloud Atlas?
Well,
I'm going with Prestige.
I was going to say I would go with The Prestige.
Yep. The Prestige or Marathon Man? I'm still going The Prestige.
Why?
The twists and turns in this film are what get me every time. The Marathon Man's a great film, a great thriller, but The Prestige, I think, is structured so in such a special way that it takes you to a place where you realize by the end that in a way you've been tricked and you've been watching this magic trick the whole time. I think that to me it just feels like there's so much more power in the structure of The Prestige.
Okay. All right, I'll go with The Prestige.
All right, that's what I'm talking about. All right, The Prestige or All the President's Men. We're getting right up there. Boy.
See, this is that was a series between Marathon Man and All the President's Men, and I mean this sort of era of filmmaking was pretty. I had a
I have
a good connection to.
I know I have to go with All the President's Men. It's as much as I love that magic of The Prestige, All the President's Men is truly, I think, just one of the most powerful films out there. So
I think so too. I mean, those performances, when you look at these performances of these two men, Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman against De Niro and his little friend. I mean, Robert Redford.
De Niro. I'm like, wait, which one is that?
De Niro and his little friend. Oh my goodness! I was not in this. Who is this? Robert Redford and his little
Dustin
friend.
Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman.
His other 76 movie.
Yeah, it's that's a much more powerful buddy movie. Let's go with
you sold that one well. All right.
I've derailed.
The Prestige or Dark City? I would go with The Prestige.
Yeah, I'd go with The Prestige.
The Prestige or The French Connection?
I am going to go with The Prestige.
Yeah, that's a really hard one because The French Connection is just such an absolutely brilliant film.
It really is. But on this one, I think it gets back to the twists and turns. You got me thinking about the twists and turns in your little monologue a few minutes ago, and now I'm thinking about the sort of gamesmanship of this movie that I think is so fascinating, rather than the bull in a china shop kind of just sort of linear plow through of
Yeah, I'm with you.
Whether or not I do in fact pick my feet in Poughkeepsie.
Well, I'll go with The Prestige.
All right.
You sold me. All right, The Prestige or The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. We're hitting tough ones.
It is. This is a tough one. I on this one, I think I'm going to go with Sierra Madre.
Yeah, I think I am too.
It is the sequence that earns it for me. Is the when he goes nuts.
Yeah,
coming down the mountain. That's too much.
There's just so much stuff in Sierra Madre that just makes that just a brilliant film. All right, there we go. We are at number 14.
14, that's pretty high.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad. I mean, it's no network.
It is no network.
What are we doing next week?
Next week, we are jumping all the way to the other
2006.
We're going to watch The Illusionist.
Yeah. I'm excited to watch this movie. I don't have as good a memory of it as I thought I did, particularly in context of The Prestige, which I've always liked more than The Illusionist, and so I've
only
curious.
seen The Illusionist the one time. I really enjoyed it when I saw it, but I haven't seen it since. So I'm excited to go back and revisit it and see what I think of it again.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to tell you what it's about at this point tonight. Part of it's another magic movie.
It's that magic movie, right?
Yeah, the Hulk guy was in it. Whatever.
That's funny.
I'm excited about that one. So that'll be coming up next week, and then we've got our film board coming up the week after that, and then we're full on into summer, the summer swing. I'm excited about this too.
I have one thing that I forgot I was going to say.
Of course you do.
I still say it.
Roll it.
Christopher Priest, who wrote the novel The Prestige, on his website, he actually wrote a book called The Story of a Film, in which he looks at, from his perspective, in a way it's kind of an autobiographical look of himself watching the novel getting adapted to a film, what he thought of it, what was the nature of the characters, how did that change as the film was made and everything. It looks like a really interesting take on a novelist looking at his work being modified from one type of work to another. Looks like an absolutely fantastic story, and it sounds really interesting. We can put a link up for that one in our show notes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Definitely want to check that out. And, I started the book some time ago. I realized as I was preparing that I actually have the book sitting here on my iPad, and I just haven't ever finished it. I don't know why. I think it's a good book. Have you read it?
I haven't, but it does sound interesting.
Yeah. It sure does.
Yeah,
it sounds interesting. All right. Hey, this is good. We should do
Fantastic.
This again. All right.
Let's try it in a week. What do you think?
I'll be here.
We wanted to take a moment to thank you for your continued support over the years. It's hard to believe that we've been having weekly, in-depth discussions about movies since 2011.
That's right, 12 years and counting. Producing this show is a labor of love for us, but it does require a lot of time and effort each week.
If you enjoy our podcast and would love to help keep it going, there are some easy ways you can show your support. One is by using our Originals page to shop for the original source material that movies we've discussed were based on.
That's right. In Season 1 alone, we covered 13 films adapted from books or plays, from Charlie Kaufman's adaptation to David Fincher adaptations like Fight Club.
In Season 2, we covered even more, like Powell and Pressburger's The Red Shoes and The African Queen from our series about legendary cinematographer Jack Cardiff.
We can't forget about the 4 Jason Bourne movies we talked about. Love those movies. Well, the original trilogy, at least.
For our Richard D. Zanuck series, we did Jaws, Rush, Big Fish, and more. And for our horror series, we talked about John Carpenter's The Thing, which was adapted from Who Goes There?
We did our first great car chase series with movies like Bullet, The French Connection, and Drive. And for the holidays, we did Preston Sturgis's Christmas in July.
We had a great John Huston series with adaptations like The Maltese Falcon and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
And for our baseball series, Moneyball with Brad Pitt. Have I told you lately how much I love that movie?
Yeah, I think you have. Plus, our Magician series and Heist film series had adaptations as well.
Tons of page-to-screen gems. Listeners can find the details and links to the original material at thenextreel.com/originals. Every book, play, or movie you buy through our links helps support the show, and it's no extra cost to you.
So dive in and get your next read today. thenextreel.com/originals has all the films adapted from other sources that not only we have covered, but all of the shows on the Next Reel family of podcasts. Check it out and get reading.
Support the show and build your reading list. It's a win-win. Head to thenextreel.com/originals.